Hi all, and welcome to another exciting tutorial from Model Railroad Technique. Have you ever wanted to build a structure that is one of a kind or fits a specific location, but thought it was all too difficult because you don't know where to start or what products to use? Building your first scratch building can be very daunting and challenging. In this video series, I will step you through this simple little scratch build. So let's not waste any more time and let's get building. Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos, support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Technique. So the little structure I'm going to build on the side there is like a little furnace that will service that, would have serviced that shed. So what that's pretty well just made out of is just basic cardboard structure. You can cut it to any size you like. So the size of that I've got there is about 1 inch by 1 inch, that front panel. And I just used some basic cardstock from cereal boxes. Now the colour I've used there is just I started with a grey primer from a rattle can, and then I coloured it up with what they call a Americana. It's called a soft black colour. Now so the bracing I use on each corner is 1/8 of an inch scale lumber, so just cut that up to length and glue it in the corner to give it some rigidity. So what I'm going to look at doing is doing a tar paper roof that's going to go across the top of it. Now this technique I learned from a gentleman by the name of Jason Jensen on his channel, so I'm going to give it a go and see what it looks like, because obviously he gets some great effects with it. So basically what you do, you start with a normal A4 size piece of black construction paper, and then you use a primer and you just dust the coating over the top of it, so you can sort of see that it's not I haven't spray painted it so it's all sort of the primer color. You just give it a spotting so some of the black actually comes through. So with that, you then cut it into your strips for your tar paper. So that is probably about 1/2 inch or 1 centimeter. So it's too big for what I want to do, but what you need to do is, because a roof that's this small, this next technique will be a bit difficult for anything smaller than that, so I'll probably cut that down in half. So I'm going to use a 400 grit sandpaper. You could probably go down to 200 grit sandpaper. Anything more than that and you're probably likely to just obliterate the piece of paper. So the easiest way to do it, you get a block of wood that's probably around the length of the strip that you're going to use, and then you put it on the edge. And so it's just a matter of sandpapering the edges off. And what that does, it sort of slowly starts to degrade the paper, giving it a bit of a weathering type effect. So you got to be a bit careful you don't go overboard with it. And you just go along. What it does, it just brings that black back through, and it makes it look very worn and weathered. So I'm just going to work on sort of just this little bit here, because that's all I'm going to need at this point in time. And just looking at this technique, it's probably best. This technique, excuse my fingers, but it's a little bit fiddly. So you're just working your way along the tar paper to get that black to come through. But what it's actually doing, it's making it come up to look like it's sort of weared and feathered type edges. So it's quite an effective technique. I think Jason, when he does it, he uses a bit heavier grit sandpaper, but I thought I would start with a bit of a finer one until I sort of master the technique. Now after you sort of do that, what you can do is go in with your hobby knife and just fray those edges a lot more. So it's just a matter of getting the blade of your X-Acto knife. So that's just a number 11 blade, and it's just a matter of chipping away at those edges. Beat up look along the front there, so let's probably come up just a little bit further, and that will probably do. So for a roof on a structure that's probably bigger than this, you'd probably use the thickness of that, and then it's just a matter of gluing it out, gluing it up and lining it up. So I've made a little roof for this little structure, so it's just going to go sort of like that. So the little hole there is obviously for a little chimney, so it's just a normal drinking straw that I've added primer to it. Then from the primer, it's still drying, you make the little stand, or the chimney. So the colour I've used, the predominant colour of that is the soft black, and then the little banding on it is a raw umber. So the little banding, what I've done is just use some run-of-the-mill painter's tape. This top stuff comes in blue and green here in my part of the world, and then it's just a matter of cutting it to length or cutting it to the width on the chopping board, and then wrapping it around. So on the back end there, all I do is put a dab of CA glue, and it will keep it there nice and tight. So I haven't weathered that up yet, so what that'll do, once that goes through, it'll sit like so, and that's just a matter of me manipulating that hole to get it as vertical as I can, sort of something along those lines. So what I then need to do is put some cables down and maybe across to the building just to support it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put a layer of glue over. Just any PVA type glue will do. Putting it nice and evenly across, and then now obviously if you're a bigger roof, all you'd probably do is maybe 2 or 3 lines at a time, because this glue goes off reasonably quickly. But a little structure this size, you can just do the whole lot. So to give you some idea, the measurement of this is about 1 inch, and 1 inch by 1 inch roughly. So from that, we'll get our tweezers. And like all roofs, we start at the bottom. So I've cut the length just a little bit wider than it needs to be, so I can just go back through and trim it. So what I'm going to do is, excuse my fingers, so the first length of it is just slightly over the edge of it, and it's just a matter of methodically going through, putting your paper on. Now I watched a video recently of different people using different colours with these types of roofs, from depending on what coloured paper you've got. So probably what I need to do is I'm going to be 1 strip short. Just a matter of now to cut it to length, so get a nice new blade. So that's the sort of look that we're getting now. It's up to you how much you want to go overboard with that. So, and that's sort of, now I'll go back into some pastel chalks with that. Now I've still got to obviously get the hole to come through where the smokestack comes, but that's I think quite a reasonable version of a tar paper roof. So we've nearly finished this little structure now that sits on the side of the building here. Now what I've done is I've added some support cables to it with just some brass rod, coloured it up with a burnt umber type paint, put the smokestack in, and then I've gone in with some pastel chalks and some Vallejo pigments. So that's the burnt umber pigment, just a little bit of the white for the charcoaly, which I've mixed in with the black sooty colour that I've put around the chimney. So I probably will go back in with some more pastel chalks and some Vallejo powders at a later stage when the build is all together, just for continuity and getting the similar types of tones from the wall. So I've just added a little bit of 8x8 scale lumber to the sides there, just to add a little bit more character and give it a bit more support. So that was just painted up the normal way with the wood with the bird umber, and then just added some pastel chalks over it. So it's a very simple and easy process. Okay, over onto the structure now that's going to sit on the top. I've still got to do these barges that are sort of going to sit in this sort of location. So what I've done is I've painted, that's just strip wood there. So what I've done, I've just done an undercoat of the slate grey. But sorry, before I did that, I went through with my razor saw just to add a little bit of texture to the board to give it more work. So you just run the teeth down. Probably can't see that texture. Now that sheen that you can see is the next step. So what I've done, I've had a FolkArt crackling medium to it, and then I'm going to add the over colour, which is a mixture of the warm white and the buttermilk that comes up with a sort of an aged, sort of almost like a vintage white colour. So what I'm going to do is I'll only need a very little amount of all this, so I'm just going to go splodge some into my palette here. I'll just put this the buttermilk on the side, because then I can sort of bring this colour in as I see fit, because I don't want to go overboard with that. And I've got a sort of that size brush, just a cheapie from the local art store. I probably will need all that. So, and there's two things you could do. You could either do these barges the same colour as the structure, or the same colour as what you're going to paint the roof. But so I'm just going to go in. So the crackling medium, you put your undercoat on first, or your undercolour that you want it to come through. Then you put the crackling medium, make sure that's absolutely dry, and then you paint the colour over top that you want to crack. So I'm going to put it on reasonably thick, make sure I get all the tops. So this FolkArt crackling medium is something new. I've only used it I think once before on a little test piece, so I'm interested to see how it comes up. I've only painted one side of it, so this back side won't crackle, but I'll colour that up just for completeness. Okay, so it sort of gives that grey colour starts coming through, and just a slight little cracks through it. It's quite a nice effect. It's not coming up all that well on the camera, unfortunately, so what I might have to try to do is take a photo. So the next step here is to add, once they're a bit more dry, is add them to the model. Okay, so that is adding the barge boards to the roof. That sort of neatens up that gap there just a little bit. Okay, so the next thing I look at doing is building a little platform, loading platform off here. So pretty well what I'm going to look at, it's going to go from this side to this side, which is about 2.5 inches in the old terms, and 3/4 of an inch high. So what I'm going to look at doing and how I'm going to make that is with scale lumber. So I'm going to use, for the bearers and the support, I'm going to look at 8x8s, and for the individual boards I'm going to go the 1x8 scale lumber. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've cut my scale lumber to length, and I'm going to put it through a few washes of Indian ink and isopropanol. So this is my light version of it. It's already had one staining, so some boards I might do one, other boards I might do more, but then I'll colour them up with the aged wood effect. So what I've looked at doing is I've drawn up like a little template here. So we've got just so I can try to keep things square as I can. So we've got the two end bearers and the middle bearer, and then I'll probably put one here and here just for a bit more support regarding the board that's going to sit on the top. So what we're going to do, we're just going to use normal PVA tacky glue like I do with all my other. So we're going to go through. So we'll start by putting 2 bearers down. The first bit I envisage is going to be a little bit fiddly and tedious, just to get everything square and lock it away. Alright, the first one's always going to be the hardest, to try to get that in and lock it in nice and square. Once we sort of get this substructure in, I think the rest of the build's going to come along a lot easier. Alright, what we'll do, we'll get this end bearer in and then we'll square it up. Okay, so there's our very basic frame, not quite as square as I would like it, however, just quickly chucked it together, but it will serve the purpose for what I'm trying to do. So the next thing we'll look at doing is laying some of the boards across it. So it's just a matter of laying these one at a time, gluing them on. So what I'll do, I'm going to have a little bit of an overhang at this front edge, so I'm going to use the back edge, which will be up against the building. Obviously this process is going to be rather time consuming. There is the finished product with the top deck anyway. I'm probably going to leave it sort of a little bit straggly through there. Might add a bit more Indian ink wash over the top of that. So next thing we need to do is add the legs and supports underneath. Okay, so at this point we'll just glue all the legs in. Try to get them as square as we can and perpendicular. So I think it's probably worthwhile to mention, when you're doing legs like this, obviously very, very important to cut them as square as you can off at the ends. Now I've got a Micromart chopper that I do, which gives you a nice square sort of cut at the end. It goes without saying, it's going to make it a lot easier to have this platform sitting flat when you finally put it on the model. So I don't think I'll do it on this one because it's only very, very short, as in height, sort of structure. So you probably could, on a taller structure, you would have bracing through the legs here, but I don't think I'm going to worry about it on this one. You could if you wanted to, but as I said, it's not a very tall structure. So we'll see how good my cutting is. It's just a matter of going through that by eye and trying to square them up, get them nice and square in the corners here. Now that's not looking too bad at this point in time. So I'll try to get that up on the side without the legs dropping off. I won't bore you with how I do the wood colouring because I did it in my last video, so I'll put the card for that above, but as you can see, there's quite an effective process. It comes up nicely. So the final wash in the last video, I did sort of what ties all these colours together was a little bit more viscous or a bit thicker. So this one I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. So it's just testing the wash there. You can see it's exactly the same paint, just watered it down a little bit more, and it's just a matter of splodging it all over and tying all those colours together. Okay, so this is the end product. I have taken the liberty to dry that with the hairdryer to speed up this process. I've added a little bit of a dry brushing technique over the top of that with sort of a beigey type colour. Now you can see the sort of the dry brushing sort of brings up that wood grain very nicely, so it's just important you need to follow the grain when you're doing the dry brushing with a light grip. Now at this point in time, this has been a rather long video. My initial plan was to make this little deck as a part of a staircase I was going to do off the main building, but my supplies for that have not come as yet. So that's the structure in just about its entirety finished. So all I've added a few little stovepipes on the roof at the top there, added some people on the deck, and also added some lighting to it, which was quite easily to do with just some LED lighting. Also the signs on that clapboard front wall there, I'll put a link up to one of my previous videos on that. This is going to be the end of the video at this point in time, so I'm hoping to be able to get to the staircase in due course. Just keep an eye out for my upcoming video series. It's got a very much of a Christmassy feel to it, so I won't give away too much. So I hope you enjoy it. So thanks again and see you next time. Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Techniques.